my ideal scenario is that I
Okay.
charge an additional amount that I can easily.
So, welcome to DC404. We are live on Google Hangouts. I gotta send up a link, but we're live. So, if you don't want it captured from the posterior, so it doesn't come back and bite you in the butt, don't say it. Yeah. Welcome to DC404. For anybody new? No newbies. Okay, cool. You're a newbie? No. Okay. Well, how'd you find out about us?
Through someone else. That's the group.
Oh, it's your fault. Okay. Welcome to DC404. We get this space for free, and so now we're in trouble. We get this space for free, and they're very accommodating for us. And so make sure that you tip your waiter or waitress like you got a chance with, as Taylor would say. Because they really do nice for us to make sure things. For instance, they came in and fixed our wireless by giving us a secure connection instead of crappy the wireless one. That was kind of cool. Lee's going to give a presentation on Federation. Anybody, you all familiar with what Federation is? Good. I'll make it easier. And so he's going to give us a presentation on it. It's not working? I think it's all lowercase.
And is that blocks?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So he's going to give us a presentation on Federation. How many of you run federated services at work or wherever?
Enough for you, yeah. How many?
Yeah.
And how many people said they knew what Federation was? Okay, good.
I didn't.
Some of you guys,
Well, you might know what
Federation.
this presentation is going to be at the beginning, too high level. I usually give it to people that we're trying to include them in the decision-making process, like a director in HR or an accounting VP that wants this done for some reason, and the CTO, CIO says, hey, make sure they're included. So they want to know what it is. The beginning is like I said, passwords equals bad, lots of apps with passwords equals bad, how can we solve this, what's more secure? Halfway through it, make it interesting. But the beginning of it is going to be, for anybody who's on the DC404 list, it's just a lot of opinion at the beginning and no stats, no practice or that password. It's going to be very basic. So if you wonder why the hell we're watching this, it's aimed at a different group for the first 20 slides. After that, we're going to go more technical, and at the end, we can go further if you guys want to. Now that we're online, I can actually hopefully show you an example of some code that spits out information on Federation in real time with a couple of servers up on Amazon. Now that I can do that. So, anyhow, I'm Lee Clemmer.
And Bo Wood's going to tip.
I'm currently working on IBM Cloud Security meeting. That is a new position for me. Presentation from a company out of Cleveland, Ohio called CSS. I did Federation Identity and Access Management with them for 2 years. A lot of Microsoft Stack stuff, C#. New customers like a T-Mobile, Citigroup, Office Depot, those kind of guys. So usually also this is directed at the enterprise. Like Ron, who wants to federate with 10 or 12 people on the internet, Google Docs.
Kind of near where you.
That. A lot of the stuff is going to be enterprise. How many people work at a big company? 5,000 people or more. Okay, good. So, well, you get the idea that it's aimed at the enterprise, at corporations, and usually the scale of the projects we're talking about are 5,000 users and up. Current project I'm on with IBM has 8 million users in there, and that's with one customer. Some of the others apparently are bigger, and that's unlike this stuff the last couple of years. It was all Microsoft. The stuff we're on is all Linux and Java. So, and that has nothing to do with this presentation. I'm just rambling. So, consideration of momentum and analysis of, oh, wait, wrong presentation. It's not actually about light-speed particles with low mass. But enterprise federation and hopefully how to do things properly. The modern enterprise, as we said, has numerous platforms and operating systems. You've got mission-critical applications out there, and those applications are written in different languages. What that ends up with, usually, as you guys may realize, numerous identity stores. And what we know that is user accounts with different information about them. You might have Active Directory, OpenLDAP. You probably have some big SQL databases. One of them may be Oracle. It might be DB2. The more important the app is, usually the more proprietary. Oracle apps are very enclosed, walled garden for their stuff. And then on the Linux side, open LDAP and things, you can do anything with it you wanted, but you got to make it work yourself. So you'll also find security departments there. As you guys know, we talk about different policies and requirements for usernames, passwords, and so forth. You know, we want two-factor authentication over here. We have to have it. You can't get to this one unless you're through the VPN. You've got to do that this way and that way. And that causes problems when you try to make everything easy for the users. Suddenly they've got the need now for business partners to come in. Now we got to get usernames and passwords for those folks on the outside. This has gotten even worse lately because now rather than have everything in-house, people are farming out line of business and mission-critical applications out to the cloud and software as a service. I'm sure you guys know about that. The cloud apps have all the same problems. I've got to use user information that's out at Azure or ServiceNow, Concur, any of these line of business apps. They got their own rules if you just try to go and say, hey, I want to use my email address as my usernames. Oh, we want to use somebody's clock ID for a time and attendance. In the rush to release everything, the authentication, often improvements there, often wound up with SSL is good enough, or the authentication is fixed in the next version. You know, oh, we can't handle special characters in the password for this stupid accounting app. Well, now it doesn't match what's in AD. We can't synchronize the passwords. You know, we want them to be longer because the audit said they're too short at 8 characters, only upper and lower case. You know, the Java guys are offshore and they didn't understand a word you said. Fix it in the next version. And as you guys know, built-in mechanisms for authentication for all these web apps in the browser can be problematic. Usually in the enterprise that I've worked with, you'd use on the enterprise network Kerberos, so you see that as IWA, integrated Windows authentication. But if you've got partners and certain people in the cloud, you're not going to be doing integrated browser authentication via Kerberos across the internet to wherever. So we can't do that. Works good on the LAN and the enterprise with AD, not so good. And of course, the browser front end doesn't change the architectural decision for separate application-specific authentication processes and identity stores. Putting a browser in front doesn't help if you still got an Oracle database, Open LDAP, and whatever else. So we wound up with the path of least resistance. Enterprise web apps end up usually using forms-based authentication. And the model is almost exclusively username and password. And some of the enterprises we work with, usually to get on a VPN and to get onto a critical app like, I don't know, payroll, accounting. Somebody will say, we got to have two-factor for you to go and get to this. Anything really important. Financial sector tends to be better about that because of the audits and things they have. And just you guys will know, I work with some brokerage houses and big insurance companies. They're usually pretty tight on the network without a smart card or a dongle with two-factor. Other than that, though, once you get in, it's still username and password in the browser. So for an n number of applications, we end up winding up with n number of forms-based implementations to log in. And unless that library or code used by the app uses a centralized identity store, like Active Directory, usually for the enterprise, or a database they've got centrally, you also end up with approximately n number of identity store stuff is stuck in. And even if you use password synchronization to talk about, you've still got a lot of different identities stuck out there. These applications will have to map those user identities and make their own authorization decisions. Just because I've got people in LDAP, I don't know if I've got all the attributes I need in LDAP for that to send over to that app. Maybe you can't look at it. It's just got the user ID that's been mapped out in the database. We talked already about, because I jumped ahead like that, requirements and limitations for the ID format, password length, complexity, and valid characters. And what we always run into is legacy applications, like on a mainframe with RACDF, are always a problem. And I'm not going to touch it. We can't solve it. We're working right now with a very large auto manufacturer that's got us trying to do RACDF. And from an overall security architecture, passwords in these cases are just flying across the network every time a user initiates a new session with an application, even when you're using SSL. That's the reality.
What's RACDF?
Old mainframe authentication protocol.
It's the Betamax to DCF2.
Yeah, cards in a big stack with holes punched in them. Yeah, that.
You do against 3.
I got this cassette deck. I can plug it in. It's got my program on it. So he said, usernames and passwords, as we know, all the talk of these we see, are susceptible to interception. And once they're intercepted, of course they can be used by an attacker. You guys know this. And the idea in my mind of infrequently changing a password will help mitigate this. It's always seems strange. If somebody grabs that database, are they going to wait a month and a half? Oh, you got to change your Windows password now. No. Once they grab that information off the wire, they're probably going to use it immediately. As I mentioned, synchronization between all these different identity stores can be very problematic. A lot of the work, it thankfully pays very well. What I've done is doing synchronization code to talk to all those different data stores. Pull information. Somebody gets control delete on Windows, updates their Active Directory password. Then you're gonna have something that looks and says, hey, this user GUID got updated. I see a change here in AD. I'm gonna write out the synchronization code to all these other targets. And that can be problematic. The more applications you've got, the more different languages and platforms they're on, the more of a pain in the neck that synchronization software is to deal with.
Propagation rates.
Yes. You know, you're doing it real time and having a block and the user finishing. So you said, yes, I really did reach out and write to all those, or is it go to a queue? You know, MSN queue for the Windows side and wait, and you don't know whether it got changed or not. You know, the problem I just ran into this week was for one of the customers, they had, you know, you didn't know the password got updated. You went out to the little web portal to do stuff, say reset my password. It worked right there for that data store. It's the main one for the portal. But we didn't have code that would tell you, hey, did it actually go out and talk to AD back at the enterprise through the VPN? Did it talk to the other data store? So the developers were working on that last week. It was interesting that they coded it that way originally. So yes, that can be problematic. Now, save this password that comes up in the browser every time I go out to Fidelity or USAA is really annoying and inadvisable, as you guys know. You wouldn't want to actually save the password in the browser. And yet, to make it easy on me as a user, it keeps asking. You know, password sync could help with this, but you can run afoul of the application limitations. I mentioned that. Am I going forward? Okay. Some companies might implement password management software like a user might use, a LastPass or KeyPass or something like that. It automates that sending of usernames and passwords for those number of apps. My wife's company, actually, very small company, like 12, 18 people. A couple exploits, doesn't matter. A small group, less than 20, they've actually used LastPass to deal with that for their different applications. They said, we're just going to do that. Obviously, it doesn't solve the underlying problem of identities. That doesn't help me if I've got a user that's got a subset of their information in a centralized store, and I've still got to deal with, hey, is Lisa live at 123 Boring Lane, or is he married? You know, but does he still work for the company? You don't know about that. So, in the enterprise, what do we want from authentication? Well, instead of having passwords and usernames flying around, I'd like to have confidentiality. I'd like to have encryption and the least exposure of high-value identity information I can. I'd rather not send that Windows SAM account name, that AD account name across the wire if I don't have to. Why would I do that? If that gets intercepted, then somebody's got a key piece of information to attack from multiple different threat vectors. That attack surface is bigger with that. Same thing if I send something else. I certainly don't want to send their social security number, bank routing number, anything. I don't want to be sending that to the wire. We also want integrity. I want to know that when that target application got the message, I got an assurance that it's valid. That it really came from a source that I trust. Somebody didn't just inject, hey, I'm Lee Clemmer, here's, just trust me. Extensibility. We don't want to reinvent the wheel every time we add an application to our set of n number of apps. Do a lot of that. It's a real pain. Really don't want to do that. And ideally, we want to have standardization. Agree to format across vendors, partners, etc. And we know how much all the different vendors and folks out in the world love to standardize. We only have 1 or 2 protocols for everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
For anything, it's just 1 or 2. And they're all standard.
Don't worry, we'll make another protocol to sync them
Right.
all
I
up.
need a protocol that's a meta protocol for your protocol. Right. We'll get some of that in a minute, actually. We also would like it to have protection against replay attacks, so sniffing. You know, I don't want to ensure if someone grabs your name passwords that crack that connection. I can use it anytime I want. The next time I go in and try to use that. I'd rather have something that says, hey, you just authenticated. If somebody grabs those packets off the wire with Wireshark, it doesn't matter because they can't use them again. What do the users want? Simplified sign-on. a lot of cases, the driver for me and my work has been, you got somebody who's frustrated with that whole, I don't want to have 10 passwords and 3 different IDs, and the users are complaining the help desk gets 400 calls a day just for this one app because it sucks and doesn't have self-service reset, yada, yada. People will drive that and say, hey, can we have single sign-on? Is there a way to provide that? The users want that. Now, obviously, single sign-on might not be the biggest improvement to our security, but that's usually the driver from that side. So how can we do this? Is there a better way? Well, federation, you guessed it. We can solve those problems and can provide benefits for the developers if we do it properly. We can definitely do it improperly if we try. The solutions can provide that functionality, that reliability, and be extensible for authentication and authorization across all sorts of enterprise apps between partner and vendor organizations. Really, I promise it can. There are several federation protocols and standards in use. SAML 2.0, you guys probably know from OAuth 2, older version of SAML 1.1. Microsoft decided with a couple other vendors they would do WS Federation that actually uses a SAML token inside it. It's actually got some interesting protocol extensions. I'm going to focus on SAML 2.0 in the enterprise because that's what I've done a ton of work with over more than the last decade. So this will do some OAuth stuff, but that's all newer, mostly with the mobile apps and that. If you got web browsers on the enterprise with those big players that you've heard of, that's what I'm going to use. Even for customer-facing apps on the net. So a discussion of, a comparison of, a debate on the merits of OAuth, OpenID Connect, SAML is not the topic of this station. I say better or worse between different protocols.
That's the benefit of so many standards. There's so many to choose from.
That's right. So if you guys afterward, we can have a fist fight about which version of OAuth and OpenID is going to be the one that we all standardize on next year. So when I say SAML, that is a security assertion markup language. It's an XML-based, oh crap, open, well, I hate XML.
I guess that's why it's XML. Because if it was new, it would be JSON.
No one had picked up on it for years when I did it. XML was the new hot thing that everybody was going to love. Ages ago, that's what they picked.
No, machines love it. Humans hate it.
Waste of freaking characters. Okay, so for exchanging authentication and authorization data between parties, and the main piece we have here is between an identity provider and what they call a service provider, and that's just what I stole from Wikipedia. So it does provide for a secure exchange, potentially, about a principle called network security, and by that, just 2 different systems, really. As we're focused on web-based apps, that's got a feature called Web SSO that you're able to do for implementing SAML across domains, again, across not just DNS domains, but identity spaces. You don't have to do Web SSO. You can. As I said, it uses XML, uses those to make security tokens that have firmly defined schema requirements as well as optional pieces you can throw in. It's got very specifically defined terms to define the participants, the elements of the token, the messages and contents. Fortunately, rather than having to type all that stuff into every system, which would be really, really annoying, you can have the Federation software publish metadata, and that has all the little fiddly bits. And if you're very lucky, the metadata can make it so simple you can get this set up in 5 minutes. If you're very lucky. But this was a little more prepared. We could do it on my Amazon
So
machine to
it's
show
like
you.
publishing a DTV, basically.
It's like publishing. Like for a web service, we published out the schema for the web service, same kind of thing. So a SAML system that knows and sends information, including authentication status, validity, and optional attributes and required attributes is called an identity provider, or IDP. And a partner system that provides application access on receipt of that is called a service provider, or SV, because they choose an insanely generic name like service provider. And it's old and never occurred to anybody from that OASIS working group that maybe service provider was a little generic. So yeah. Some products like Microsoft ADFS use slightly different terminology, and then generally the WS Federation-based ones use this. they'll call the identity provider a claims provider, and the service provider is called a relying party. They're the same things. I'll often mix and match terminology because we're dealing with software as a service, some other service, and so it's easier to say RP or relying party or consumer. It's less confusing. So if I mix and match the terms, that's why. The end result of all the protocol exchange is the sending of a token, and that's a SAML assertion, and that's just their name for it. It's an assertion. It's just a little XML document that goes from the identity provider to the service provider. And again, for the purposes of this talk, it's going to be via the user's web browser. It's going to be in an HTML form variable. So very much like if you had a form and you put the username and password in, and enter it. It'd be the same type of thing where there's a SAML assertion stuck in a form variable that gets posted. And when I'm talking about this stuff, it's usually SAML 2.0, SAML 1.1. Sometimes it's still out there, less frequently. Unless I say 1.1 to you, it means SAML 2.0. Now, the protocol is the concept of bindings and different profiles. There's a post binding, which is what we'll see 90-something% of the time. And HTTP GET, you can use just a GET and redirect binding with things in the query string. There's something called artifact binding. I'll explain that. It's interesting. And then the SOAP bindings and reverse SOAP, which I've never seen implemented ever. The SOAP we need to use for services, like again, like pretty obvious, a web service talking to another one, and not be the browser. I've never seen the SOAP one used in the browser. It's just if you had something that's proxying for a service. The only things you guys would be concerned with, you look at this, is post and GET. What they call profiles is things like that web browser SSO profile. They've also got a definition for single logout. If you've logged into 5 different applications with your federation tokens, you say, well, crap, I want to log out of all of them. I'm done. There's a concept of a single logout where it would send basically a logout token out to all the places you connected to. And there's an enhanced client or proxy profile. That enhanced client one is if you weren't using a browser. If you had a little app, like you made a mobile app or you wrote a Java app, you wanted it to not have the redirects and pop-ups for a user to type something in. So the user GUI didn't have a browser interface.
So do you know about cats?
Any more?
It's the Georgia Tech single sign-on thing.
Yeah, but it's actually a product. I don't know what the name of the product is.
Okay.
I haven't heard of it.
I was just wondering if that was actually SAML or something else, because what you're talking about now makes me really think it's SAML. And that might be why I hate it so much. So it's XML.
It may be.
I hate it working.
So maybe Keith knows something about it.
It's usually Shibboleth. It does have SAML 2.0 and Shibboleth. Usually the Federation stuff in universities is all that. So but I don't know what you got in particular. So this flow that you got here, you got your, see that? You can see that with the E9. Oh well, that user agent being the browser. Say I want to go out and get to this application that's protected with SAML. That's step 1. I hit that service provider. There may be a step in there after that when you discover the identity provider if you don't know. And we'll talk about that more later. You know, who the heck are you? You're coming from Microsoft, you're coming from Home Depot, I don't know who you are. And you'd either pick or there'd be some other mechanism to, you know, maybe you had a cookie that said that. Service provider's going to respond with the next HTML form that says, I don't know you, give me a token. Then you're redirected, that user agent, to the identity provider. You request that service. The IDP is going to have the user authenticate by whatever mechanism you'd expect. There's a web server there. You can authenticate with a username and a PIN, username and password. It can be Kerberos at this stage. Anything you want, 2-factor. That's an abstract area that going to the identity provider. It's going to respond, assuming you're successful, with that SAML token. The response. The user agent then posts that back to the service provider. When they call it, the service provider consumes the token. It means it just reads it and checks it out. If everything looks good, it'll then create a session for the user by whatever mechanism the app normally would, redirect them to that target application. And then step 7, 8 is just regular application. There's a prettier picture of it that I drew. The other one came from Wikipedia. The same thing. This one shows if you were an external user on the internet, one of my clients, going through a proxy server that's up there. I don't know if you guys want to step through that whole thing again that I just said. get the idea? Don't want to shake your head. You don't need to see it. So, when I'm talking about security with this, the SAML assertions, the XML can be cryptographically signed. They can be encrypted. A blob of XML can be encrypted for you with a X509. Attributes could also be encrypted. That's part of the standard. And your service provider could require particular authentication types. Like it may say maybe forms isn't good enough, and so you get a token that says we log in with forms authentication. That's not good enough. It tells you in there, hey, what's the level of authentication that's listed in the token. A name ID element is the identifier within the token. It can have an opaque component or transient format. In other words, when I send that token over, despite all the attributes in there, there might be at least email address, clock ID. There's that name identifier that goes as the main heading in that SAML token, and it could be something that's just a GUID that, or something that pulled out randomly that's unique. The transient one would only use once for that exchange. And those are handy because that way, it again grabs it and looks. You know what it is. You're never going to use it again. It's transient. The tokens, when you're doing this securely, should be used only once. Replay attacks. So we've got elements in the XML here that you see on the other end. What did I just get sent when I got sent the SAML token? There's an issuer, and that element contains a unique identifier of that IDP. Signature element, which contains our digital signature we made from our X509 cert private key. There's a subject element, and that says, hey, who's that authenticated user or principal? And that could have, again, those opaque or transient or just a friendly ID in it. Conditions that say, when is this token valid? Did you play me one from last week or whenever? 2 days from now? Work. And there's the authentication statement that says what happened at the IDP. It said, did you use forms based off, any number of other things could get stuck in it. Usually it's just, yes, you got authenticated. And then the attribute statement. And that's the core of what we're talking about there. We've got a multi-valued set of attributes you can put in with that principal, like my email address, my SAM account name, clock ID, which is an example. Those are all tucked in that attribute statement. Here's what one looks like, unencrypted. So, as I said, if I had a SAML request right at the top there, that SAML response ID, nice long, ugly, good-looking number. And then you've got that in response to, there's the request, third line down, that's the SAML request I'm answering for. Also down there, that assertion ID, another number for it. And as you see right in the middle there, it says issuer. I'm sure you guys can't see that. It's got a name of the IDP that's sent it. You've got the signature value, name ID, as I mentioned here, so the format was persistent. So it's persistent, there's this break. It doesn't say Clemmer or Lee Clemmer or something or other. I just used it for this session as the IDP and said, hey, here's the identifier I've got for that guy. There's information about who is the intended recipient, which service provider I'm trying to get to, and then there's our, it's not good on or after a certain time, and then the attribute statement below has whatever you decide to put in and agreed with your partner you were going to send them. And I said here, at the end, you've got, how was that guy authenticated with a password with forms. I mentioned metadata. We have to go through all this. There's a big XML blob with metadata that tells you all the sort of stuff. If you loaded that in the SP, your partner gave it to you. We'll tell you information like, hey, here's a certificate, that if you see something signed with this one, it came from me. Here are the claims you could expect, the attributes that are acceptable, all kind of good stuff. I need to look at that. It's too far away. You guys can't read that, can you?
Yeah.
I can't read that. You're kind of close. So,
No attempt to keep it in one packet.
a couple certificates, use one for signing, one for encryption, and then, there's a big blob of stuff in there. The ones from ADFS can get really elaborate. So we'll put the SAML ones, the WS-Fed ones, and SAML 1.1 in that metadata, all in this huge, long metadata document. It's sickening to parse through it to find, okay, why didn't this attribute match? What are they sending? Anyway, you're using X509 certificates for the signing and encryption in here. They can use different certificates in your partnership. You don't have to use the same ones for signing and encryption. And they don't have to have any relationship with the SSL cert that's in use on the endpoint of that server. So again, often we'll have 3 certs involved with this. I'll have one that's for signing, one that's used for encryption, and one that's just there on their F5 load balancer or on the server for SSL. Completely don't have to be the same. But they could. I had some people say, I don't want to mess with just adding a couple more cert staff to look for expiration dates on. Use the same one. And that doesn't matter. It's up to you. They don't have to be issued by a public provider. Yes, but in some cases they use self-signed certs for the encryption or the signing cert. Because they're not, as part of this exchange, being sent out to the browser or necessarily published, then it being self-signed would be okay, it won't break. Sometimes an implementation might require a check, though, for a revocation list. So you generally wouldn't want to do that if you can't get to that CRL, then something would fail. Now, internally in the enterprise, they've got their own PKI, their own certification authority. Often we'll use internally issued certs, and it can always look up that revocation list and see what's going on with it. But a lot of cases, again, it's things like Azure or Google or whatever we're federating out to the world. Well, we probably don't want to use self-signed certs in this exchange. I think Microsoft won't let you. The request has a unique identifier, and the associated response will include an in response to that request. And that provides a handy method to help prevent replay attacks. Your service provider, if you just throw the SAML assertion you snatch off the wire, that's going to go, how do you do that? You know, I don't want to, why are you sending me this again? And you've got a time window for not before and not on or after. That also helps prevent replay attacks. They'd have to use it fairly quickly if they grab one. It shouldn't work at all because the SP ought to say, again, I already dealt with this exchange. It was a time. You can't replay it. But if that's not working, you could also, this way, you know it's stale. And you can require, as I mentioned before, because I like to jump ahead, a particular method. Some applications might want stronger authentication than others. So each of these partnerships are like a one-to-one with your identity provider and some application partner, another application, another one. Each one of those can have a different requirement. One could say forms, one could say you got to do Kerberos, another could say, yeah, I want you to use two-factor. So that's handy. As we saw in the get and post bindings, the browser gets redirected from the service provider to the IDP and then back. These redirects transmit the request and response as variables in an HTML form. That is important. Because how do I get the browser redirected and get post form variables in there? You know, is there a magic fairy or unicorn that makes that happen? No. You've got to use JavaScript. And it's just something like that. And my page I had here, I had the element that had the form in it called go, and it just, there's a little script in the page that you generate, and it sends the thing off. Just that simple. And I mean, somebody like Ron who doesn't want to use JavaScript in his browser, if you were in the enterprise, you got to use it for this or it just won't work.
It runs not here. It runs not here.
So we can talk about it. A common point of confusion for those get and post bindings and that passive profile, we call the web browser profile, the SAML token is a bearer token. The browser gets the token from the IDP and then hands it to the SP. The IDP and the SP servers do not talk directly to each other. You hear that in my voice, that strain getting there. When I give this presentation to developers, they look like they're paying attention, and then I go off and they're trying to talk directly between us. Do that. That won't work. And now when you're using artifact resolution, they do that. The response has a piece that says this is the artifact, go look here, and then the SP will contact the IDP directly and get that information. That's for some additional security to use that back channel. Almost nobody uses artifact resolution. Again, you might in a big organization that's had SAML there for 2 years and they wanted it. You almost never see that now, maybe 5% of the time. Anyway, not having to have that exposed is nice. You can have your identity provider not pointed out to the internet, or if all your users are either internal or in a VPN, because the servers don't talk directly to each other, your user can go out and hit, again, Azure, Office 365, whatever other Concur, ServiceNow. They talk to the server internally to get a token. So you don't have that IDP in your internal network exposed outside to attacks.
Yeah, but the token will work with those external services because you're integrated, right?
The browser fetches it and hands it off.
Yeah.
And that if you got connected to the VPN, then yeah, you've got to have a way to get to the IDP. But for many of the designs I've got, the assumption is they're either always coming in over VPN or they're on the LAN. And so there's no need to proxy or publish the IDP out to the internet. I know the point of federation, of course, is to shift responsibility for authentication to a trusted identity provider. So, as you guys all are going to know, you would never do something like include a password in the SAML assertion as an attribute. In the unlikely event that you thought that, but I don't think any of you did, nobody did, right? So, you would never do that. There would be no point. What we want to do is limit the information sent from the IDP only to that which is required to uniquely identify the user, in my opinion. Only what is needed to properly qualify the user, in my opinion. In some of the projects I've worked on, a particular architect, who was a great guy, ended up wanting to throw every possible attribute from AD across the wire to the applications.
Java architect.
No, he was a .NET guy. But he thought the thing would be, in case the application later on needed it, let's throw this whole set of attributes and claims just so they'd be there. And only what is needed. Again, one of the neat things about this is that time app only needs clock ID. That's what we do. Time and attendance software, in particular, would only need department and clock ID for that user. So there's no need to transmit the AD name, display name, anything else. It's one of the cool things about it. As long as you've got that mapping and you know on that side for the time and attendance app, hey, I know who the Clemmer is. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in department AD2. A hypothetical app doesn't need to use anything. You can keep using clock ID. You don't have to go in and change it. If you decide to use federation, you're not going to say, I got to change this database table and add a column for this. And so that's cool. Now, suppose you've got not everything in Active Directory. You don't want to extend your schema, or you don't want to do something with Microsoft. You don't. Their software ADFS actually can very easily fetch attributes from multiple identity stores. So if you wanted to put 2 or 3 databases along with AD in there, they made it really easy to do that. I can't imagine it being any harder in any other federation software that I've used. Not particularly difficult, but that's important to realize when you're talking about these partnerships. You aren't stuck with attributes from one source in your partnership. You're asking a question.
So Microsoft lets you connect to a Postgres database?
Yeah, easy. So part of the design decisions we're talking about as I walk through this is deciding which identifiers to put or keep where, how much we centralize versus distributed. Sometimes those decisions are forced on you, and we can't help that. I'm going to say, no, you have to have this here at this time. Obviously, things aren't going to be perfect. Again, some places I've been, they don't mind extending the schema for their directory as much as a pain to extend an LDAP schema. They'll just keep throwing attributes in that one place. Every time they get another app, they'll extend it or they'll use it. And you get extra exchange we used a lot, that the custom attribute 1, custom attribute 2, custom attribute 3, and you just keep sticking data in there that you want. Go to the next customer, like, wait, do you guys use custom attribute 3 in the exchange plan? It's crazy. Why would you guys do that?
To make it easier to migrate.
You need to keep track of in your head which of those attributes in AD are the ones you want. They're all called custom attribute X. Anyway, your enterprise employees might use 2-factor authentication and Kerberos to access the desktop. They almost certainly do. Their client usually must be part of the AD domain. Again, a lot of this is Windows focused. So you can do Kerberos via the browser, and you don't have to have forms based. They can just magically go. It's like magic. That might be a bit more difficult to crack unless you just hack the users, own their laptop, and then it's easier because they don't have to type anything in. Once they're logged on, you just say, click, go. So there's a pro and a con to it. If you're out here in the room and I'm trying to use Kerberos to go, it's probably harder for you to crack. But if you do, it's a lot easier to get into the app that I'm trying to protect. That's a balance. A lot of people I work with end up on the land, again, they want to use Kerberos to talk with Federation on that side. So the IDP is just, again, seamless sign-on for the users. There's nothing inherently wrong, as I usually am telling this to our director person, with their IDP that has a username and a passphrase, if that's what they have to have. Sometimes people say that because they just want to have a portal that the users go to and use a username and password. Whether it's the same one they use to log on to Windows every morning or not, they just want that.
The CEO keeps losing his file.
Yes. I don't know where that PFOB went. The benefit's still there. You can use a single login point rather than a dozen or however many. As you can imagine, one potential attack surface against the Federation involves the use of that JavaScript and those browser redirects. Just the way that protocol is defined, those have to happen. That's just the way it is. So if an attacker can intercept, impersonate, or interfere with them, your user could be redirected to a bogus or rogue IDP. And you can imagine somebody knows what that portal page looks like, you can fake it, and the user doesn't notice something's wrong. Any number of attacks we talk about on the list all the time. There's a danger there because when they get that redirect, they're just going to type in their password.
But the site key looks right.
It all looked fine. I don't know why it was in Chinese, but you know, it looked fine. I thought you were just working on the server. Yes.
Bank of America.
It's a risk.
The image that they wouldn't hold.
I want to acknowledge, as big as I am on Federation, it's a bigger problem if one set of credentials is going to let you into a dozen apps. I'm not claiming to fix those problems, neither is SAML. I know it's a risk. And don't I have to change all my application code so that it supports SAML? Yes, yes you do. There are plenty of mature libraries for the languages you use. On the Java side, there's a Spring framework. They've got great stuff. I had some stuff I wrote in C#. I gave it to a guy. It was fast.
Bug for bug.
Yeah, word for word, but they can be very quick. The Microsoft stuff, again, is very easy. If you've got the install done for ADFS, and you've got metadata from both sides, it can be 5 minutes to set everything up. Microsoft's piece just basically goes in on the IIS side, and changes the web.config file very simply, and then you're done. That's, you know, for the developer, they've got it in the Visual Studio. They can go and click and say, make a federated atom. Pull down a little tool, click, and it just fills in the web config for them. And then you fill in the blanks with the information. It can be very fast to change the Windows tabs. It can be really easy. It can also be really, really hard. Doesn't want to learn about it. But once you do this, as I told the folks in development for the enterprise, now you've got a pattern to use for authentication for all your applications. And you can standardize on that, and it makes it very simple. You're not doing everything a different way with every little development team. And almost all vendors we're business with are supporting SAML 2.0 now. And there's plenty of help out there if you need help integrating SAML. For the stuff that's more complicated than what we're talking about here. Now, what it isn't, this is not a session management solution. The transactions here are atomic. If I were to keep going out, clearing my cache, I'm going to get a different SAML token every single time. It's completely atomic. There's not a session management solution involved at all. Doesn't use cookies. When I talk about tokens, it's not a cookie. You would never want to save the SAML token in a cookie. Do not do that. Mr. Developer did that. Don't do that. That's not what it's for.
And one good way to do it anyway, it's one time.
Right.
So
that's not the point. They tried it. So we'll turn that stuff off. It's configurable, man.
Well, yeah, they didn't like that the app timed out after 3 hours, and they wanted it to be 12 hours.
So
It's a cookie.
don't do that. And it doesn't know or care. This again is important. IDP is that SAML token, crafts it, sends it off to be consumed by your app. The IDP does not know or care about whether the app accepted it, if it used the assertion, if it blew up. There is no, again, it's atomic and there's no talking between the SP and the IDP. So it doesn't know, it doesn't care. You know, it's not that. There's no talk back to tell the user to send back the IDP. I got rejected.
Yeah, maybe I missed something here, but so since the app doesn't talk to the IDP, and I know you mentioned that earlier, how does the app validate that the assertion is legitimate?
A number of ways that we mentioned there. You can look at the signature from the X509 certificate. It'll say, hey, I can read the signature because the partner gave me the public key. So I know it came from a place that I trust. And if it's encrypted, it got encrypted with public key I gave the partner, and I can decrypt it. If I can't decrypt it with my private key, something's wrong and it's bogus. Those two things. So generally you have a series of checks in there. Basically, also you look at issue text way. Did I expect to get something from this issuer, abc.com?
Maybe I missed the fact that you need to report.
You can do it without them if you were crazy. It'll work. You can just look at the strings in the XML, unbundle it, serialize it, and go, okay, here I see. I expected to get something from Clemmer.com. Great, I saw that. It matches. I expected it to be a claim that looked like this. That matches. You could if you were insane, but they're supposed to be cryptographically signed so you know that it hasn't been changed. And also in that partnership you made it, I kind of blew past that. When you load that up, you're making a mapping for that federation partnership to say, this certificate is associated with this name at the other end. So when I get it, I can match that and say yes. Not only the signature match, but I trust that it's somebody that I want to talk to and accept.
So there's
That
some
way
sort
you
of
get
agreement that has to happen between service provider and IDP, at least initially.
Yes. Again, I probably blew over that. You have to set that stuff up initially. So with the metadata, that partnership gets defined out of band, essentially. You go on the fly. Administrators, you and I would say, hey, we're going to do this. Pass me your certs and tell me the endpoint name.
Parking people don't care.
Yeah, the manager should need to know. Yes. Usually that's out of band. It's got to be done on both sides, and you got to have that agreement of what endpoint am I looking for at the other end? What's the sender name going to be the issuer? And give me a pair of certs that are going to be meaningful. Even if you don't use encryption, still that signing cert you're going to want to have. Sometimes they can be published out on the net. You can go out and look at the metadata and pull it, like something like a box.com or some of the other providers out there. You can go look at the metadata it's published. They don't care if you see the certificate that they're going to be sending stuff. It's just whether maybe you told them, hey, expect stuff from me. Say, yeah, you're not set up. I want your token.
It's like unsolicited BGP requests. They just say, whoa, I don't know,
Yeah.
get lost.
There's a way to do unsolicited. The 1.1 version of the protocol doesn't deal with the talk to the app first, get a request, and send a response. You get unsolicited SAML tokens just fired across the wire in 1.1.
Sweet.
Yeah, you can do it in 2.0. It's called IP initiated.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, not too good. Like I said, this isn't a user or policy management solution, as you can probably figure out. Nothing to do with that, not like a SiteMinder of the world or anything like that. Doesn't have anything to do with user and policies. You can implement it as we talked about, I think, more securely than lots of other authentication choices. But as we were just talking about, people can be really stupid because you can go in that metadata and agree to turn off things like checking, signing, and encryption. You can extend those time windows to 3 days. And it's flexible and extensible. There's nothing in there that says, I can't. I could, choose to ignore all this.
3 seems too short. I think 5 is the right answer.
So often we do see people not using the encryption. They just use signing. And in a demo I give you, encryption's turned off so you can see what the hell is in the assertion easily and I don't have to have the code turned on and decrypted. This doesn't eliminate, as you can imagine, the need for information on both sides of the partnership. There's some good information out there at salesforce.com if you wanted to do just-in-time provisioning, dynamic provisioning using SAML. That's not, in my opinion, a good idea, although it's possible. Generally, you would have user information synchronized or set up first. So it's lclemmer@gmail.com here. Over here, that's mapped to user 12345 at whatever, foo.com. There's got to be that partnership set up first, and we've got to have a mapping for the users. It's possible, and I don't think I'd show you in the demo, you can have an accepted SAML assertion. Yes, the SP says, okay, I'll take that. Yes, I see the user's authenticated, but there's nothing in the database about them. Usually the app would go, okay, I don't know what to do to make a user session if you're not there. But that would be potentially a valid way to set things up. It could take you to a just-in-time provisioning page. Okay, you're authenticated. Now fill in your address. Now tell me. Again, there are some use cases you might do that, but generally, I would say no. Anytime in the enterprise, we're going to have there's synchronization with something first. Like HR will send somebody a flat file and you load it up in the database for a lot of the payroll and accounting apps. So that's the main thing. Like I just said, the RP has to have an identity. The user lifecycle, all those things are still a big problem space. Now your IDP does, because we're in a browser, maintain a session state, probably via cookie. Or what else? Magic rabbits.
But that's independent of your authentication. That's just session. That's just web session management.
Yeah, so that if I go to the site again, the IDP already knows, yeah, you logged in at least once. I don't make you log in 50 times because you did. It doesn't have to be. You can make you log in every single time. That's for the IDP itself, not for the partner applications. if the IDP and you've logged in, I set up a session for you and put a timer and say, okay, once you've logged in, you don't do it for another hour. You know, partner applications, the point here is supposed to manage our own state and session. This is another area I get confused when I'm pitching this to people that aren't necessarily developers or technical folks. The apps maintain their own session, just like they would if I'm in PeopleSoft or Concur, ServiceNow, or XYZ. That app still has its own, even though it took authentication for the magic token, set up the user. If it's IIS, it's got an ASPX session cookie, it still uses that the same way. We haven't changed any of that with this authentication and authorization. You know, the apps still manage their own stuff. As I mentioned once earlier, you can do, if it's supported, you configured it, single logout, SLO. We've always had problems with that. I think we made it work once. Generally, applications don't behave properly. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. There's just something about that SLO token that's sent out.
Is it transmitted out, or do the apps have to go back and ask?
If you go out to the IDP, say I'm ready to log out, click that button.
It should send out to everybody and say, your session needs to be closed for this user.
Yeah. You have to keep track of which applications did I send a SAML insertion to, again, because then there's some state management, session management. Did the IDP keep track of where it sent SAML tokens to? Obviously, that has to be configured. Like I said, it's part of the protocol. Never works.
You can throw all that in the database though, right?
Well, you could do
I have a question, which is kind of like maybe more opsy than your average user who would just be a consumer and not an implementer of SAML. But like, have you ever done anything with like iDRAC integrating with SAML or anything like that?
I don't know what that is. What is that?
iDRAC, so it's like
Lights
server management,
Lights out card.
like lights out management protocols.
I've never done anything with that with SAML.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting. That's interesting.
well, that's generally because the DRACs and either the protocol, the IPNI protocol is
for server management, where you don't power them off and power them back on.
Yeah, it's notorious.
And
So-
not secure.
Not secure. So
Great thing on everybody.
What else tell that? It's good.
yeah, it's not much better. And so we always recommend you put that on a secure subnet, and you got to use a secure connection to get into it.
Cox, we had separate cards in the IBM servers in the back on a separate network. You had to connect to
Yeah.
or SSH to a separate terminal. You go find the server, say, hey, God, is the light flashing on this one? Am I really on the right server before I bounce it? And then you restart it. It was, yeah, completely separate network. That's a really interesting idea if you could use it. As long as it's doing TCP/IP as a browser
It's a
interface.
$1 billion business.
Well, it's got a browser integration, and like it's also got some like certificate integration as well. So it seems like it would be interesting to target that. I don't know, but it is notoriously like secure. Like,
But there's
you
5
guys
guys in an enterprise that need it, right?
Huh?
There's 5 guys in an enterprise that need it.
Yeah, maybe.
But there's how many enterprises?
Well, there's 5 guys that need it at an enterprise.
Yeah.
There's 5 guys that need it, but there's a million servers deployed with it, right? Like easily.
Yeah, that's why it's easier to just put it on a secure subnet.
I hope you don't need to bounce around.
We're almost there, I swear. How am I doing on time?
Yeah, you got 2 hours.
Cool. I didn't start the timer to see how long this is taking.
Yeah, it's gonna start for you.
So, as you know, as we mentioned, using certificates, this experience in the field shows that there is a benefit in tracking certificate expirations for your partners and not just your own. As you can imagine, if you're checking signatures and it's looking for a valid certificate, if the partner certificate goes expired, often things would just stop working.
Do they have to have a 7-day warning so you can call them?
SSO's down. SSO's down. No, everything's fine here. And it's because some partner. Now, I of course recommend using a certificate management tool in your IT organization to track those expirations. And if you've got one already, use it. My former company CSS sold a big certificate management tool. That's really cool.
I set it in my calendar whenever it expires.
Most people do that
7 days in
spreadsheet.
advance.
Yep. So if you've got a system of doing it, do it and add those partner certs to it, because if those expire or otherwise go south, they change it. That's a change and not tell you. Yeah, I needed that old thumbprint for the old cert. I kind of needed that to, thanks, that'd be great. Anyway, Some of the, especially ADFS is what I'm talking about here for specific operations. There's the idea you can do auto renewal of certificates and rollover. So it'll bring up a new cert that it requests from the CA during Microsoft land. Get one, it's got the old one and the new one there in the metadata. And then when the other one expires, it takes it out and makes the new certificate primary. Field experience shows that a lot of your relying parties don't interoperate properly with that feature. I had things blow up. I just didn't like there being two certificates in the list. We sent the token out and said, hey, I might have signed it with this one or that one. It's valid in that XML and SAML to say that. Here's two possible. Certainly might be the first. I mean, you were writing code 5 years ago. What did you think? So they blow up and it doesn't work.
Today, I wouldn't think.
No. So that assumes the partner is also monitoring that metadata. You can set up most of the systems to actually go out and say, if you can reach that partner at the other end of the internet, if it is open, they'll pull a metadata URL. You get that like a WSDL XML file, metadata file. So you can see if they've updated and changed something. Not everybody does that, and they may not be, and if they change something, for anything where you've loaded up metadata to get that partnership working, which again can be really fast, if they make any change to it, it's also got a signature on it that was generated. You got to update the metadata, or things are going to blow up. Basically, say don't do auto renewal and rollover. I said monitoring the endpoint can be valuable if you can. So in ADFS, we're talking Microsoft land. The old version 2.0, not the new one 3.0. It doesn't use IIS. It's got its own built-in web server. The old one just called yes, but it didn't do anything with all the contents on IIS and the root and everywhere else. Did a good job securing these relative paths where the stuff is, but it left everything else open. So you had basically a default IIS installation with this nice website tucked in it. So, and if you don't know, because you have to be working on it, and I just need to tell you, yeah, you might want to tighten up that IIS server.
Just a Google search.
So, like I said, if somebody goes to the IIS splash page,
Google Doors.
have them redirected, have the load balancer redirected HTTPS, because the default you install for ADFS 2.0, other than the piece that is ADFS, is just vanilla. And that's not good. So also there may be endpoints in there, there's bindings that you aren't using, like the SOAP, next to the other ones. I don't think there's any reason to leave a SOAP binding up on your SP or IDP if nothing's using the SOAP. I mean, why would you expose attack surface that's I don't know what's using it. Let's just take the hit. Be sure that they're not used internally. A couple of the ones on ADFS, depending on what you're doing with it, it sometimes uses those endpoints internally because it likes to do things that aren't documented. Export the configuration again. That's mostly for generically. I did this for the ADFS stuff. Is you can dump out the config in there. That way, if the server crashes and blows up, and then you restore from your backup your old VM snapshot. Still doesn't work. It's nice to have a backup that's got all the certs in it. It's common sense.
But we'll always give your customers full administrative access to it, and there's time and materials to fix it.
As I mentioned, consider using
10 hours.
that opaque name ID format, persistent or transient when you can, rather than just using something that's friendly. And for people who don't use encryption and just use signing, it's really convenient to have that name ID that's the subject and the SAML assertion just be gobbledygook. That's only good for one session. Only used for one session. Now, some of the code that I wrote to see what it actually looks like, if it works.
If it works, we should see it.
Later, when you get the presentation later, it's that SAML tool site has got a lot of good examples of SAML assertions and what they look like.
Well, you'll post the link to the slides on the list, right?
I will.
Okay. Don't make me hunt you down.
Come on.
I'll send
Hey.
you after you.
Okay, so you can see that really fast. I tried to go to an SP application. It redirected me to this handy ADFS server. One thing we mentioned there is it says, hey, I don't know, it didn't save a cookie to say which identity provider you're coming from. Maybe I've got 4 or 5 organizations. So the first thing it does is asks me, hey, who are you? Am I coming from some company called Epidisco or from Mobile Awesome Apps? Well, I picked that one. You can set it so that once a user's picked bad for what we call home realm discovery, that it does save it in a cookie for a certain amount of time. Some organizations will write some code that goes in there that says, I know the user is coming from here, or some other magic in JavaScript, sign into this realm. So we got a buddy. Come on, buddy. And there you go. Oh, I should just remember the password. That would be better.
I was
Well, you're supposed to be using 2FA.
That's the thing with this. I got this stuff cranked up in Amazon, and half the websites on here that I made that have pretty stuff with Bootstrap and all kind of nice HTML5. For some reason, I haven't looked at them since May. Not working, and so you just get to look at the debug page that I wrote, and not the cool, pretty stuff. That's what you get from me not planning ahead. So that is a big, nasty SAML assertion, but this just gives you an example. We'll go through there. You guys can't read this. What I looked at in my code was, this was in response to a request ID. I got the request ID there. Hey, is this recipient? Is that me? Do I want to look at it? I checked the expiration. I want to see if the issuer was somebody that I believe I should be getting SAML things from. There's that name ID that's this big long string of gobbledygook. It's associated with the user just for this session. And I looked at my conditions. I don't want it before this time, not after that time. This has got like a range of like an hour, I think. Big window. And this digest I grabbed out of there. They're not meaningful, but that's what the signature looks like. And as I said, one of the checks is, does this SAML request that's in response to match the request ID that I sent out? It's something that I wanted. And the code also checks, A, is that a known federation partner? And it might just somebody get lucky and steal some certs. Now, the signature is valid. I match the thumbprints and certificates to see if they're right. Check the assertion still in the time window. And then just for fun in there, I also had a header I set with something called PS username because one of the clients needed that. And this one took 352 milliseconds, which is really long. It's not 4. IIS is not friendly, but not unloading my DLL. See how fast that sucker goes. Boom. Okay. That's faster. And there was, in that little flash on the screen, the redirect back over to the IDP. So I had a cookie. I just logged in 2 minutes ago. Sent me a new SAML token. 7 milliseconds. That's more like it. So 7's not bad. 350 is not too good.
Well, I had to bring you back in the spot.
But without tuning IIS, it unloaded the DLL, that assembly, after it sat there for a while. That server only has 512 megs of RAM at Amazon. It's a 2008 R2 Windows server. So
you're running 2005 12 meg.
And we got IIS to give us a response with my C# code in 7 milliseconds. You can't do anything like log in with RDP and the thing will start swapping.
There's not enough memory to give you a desktop.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, that it works like that.
Yeah. No, it's,
So do you have a Linux implementation?
not at the moment to show you. There's a PHP library for this.
No.
I mean, pretty horrible programming. That's what the PHP stands for.
But there is. If you want it, I can give you the link.
Is there Perl?
Yeah, checks the mail.
I don't know if there's a Perl. That's a good question. I'm going to do a Java version of Linux.
No, Java's just as PHP.
I'm going to do a Java version on Linux. Actually, the IBM software workspace from Lighthouse. It's all Java. It's going to be the same thing. So, yay! I know you guys have questions that are much harder than the extremely friendly presentation. Ask me something. Like, no, I don't know. Bueller?
What about all that stuff?
Not talking about that in this presentation. But what about it?
It's a different solution for a different problem.
Right?
It's a competing solution.
It's a competing solution usually used for different problems, like to act on behalf of the user. If you got hugely mobile apps, you know, let's say use my Google ID to log in to Twitter. Yeah, right. That'll all use OAuth. OAuth 2. Yes. So, but yes, you could use SAML for it. I even saw some stuff that was looking through an OAuth code where I could take OAuth 2 and put a SAML 2 in there. Why? Why?
Tots. They're at tater tots. Who's missing tater tots?
Anyone? Okay. I think that maybe it's good enough.
Alright.
So, does anybody wouldn't like tots?
If you can't find where they go, bring them.
Okay, you got it.
Was that too technical, not technical enough? You want more? You guys good? Perfect?
Practical implementation.
I know, I have some better ones.
But it's hard to do that if you work for a company.
Well, yeah, if I was still with CSS, when I left in October, we had some stuff negotiated that was, you know, customer would have been okay with me logging in and test user on their lab and showing you. The practical applications are stuff like the service providers that are out there. Again, the Concur, ServiceNow, if anybody uses that, Box, it's a file sharing corporate version of Box. We still call that Box. Box for enterprise.
So we've tried to implement single password management by having a single password store. And then you hit a web app and you still have to go log in. Or, but the credentials all hit the same backend server. I can't modify the code easily. I mean, well, okay, I can modify all the code, I just don't want to. For the 10 apps that we run internal, right? I just don't want to try to. All have all that authentication modes built in. I don't see how this can solve that login thing, other than I write a centralized front end that logs them in automatically, even if they don't want to be logged into all 10 apps at the same time.
For your use case, I don't see any reason to do it.
Well, we're small too.
Yeah.
There's no money here.
Yeah, it's kind of like implementing SAP for a corporation of 5 people.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you have to be big enough to where it actually makes a difference.
Well, and I know large companies will do, you know, like a proxy server for passwords. They'll set up a website on the front end that'll connect to a mainframe on the back end, and they'll send the RACF. You know, they'll do the RACF stuff on the back end using real credentials from the front end, but they'll translate that over so the user doesn't know what their RACF credentials are. Right. And they'll do that for you. I came from the days when we did RACF in Jets 3. And I know what JCL is. But I never created any of my copy files.
Well, thank you for a great presentation.
Sounds like there's a lot of business.